Thank you for joining us, James and Charlotte. Everybody, welcome them, please. Let's get the tough question out of the way first. When you produced this film and when the film was being shot, it was a different country. And we now have, unfortunately, a political climate where the message of unconditional love in this film is one that could be rejected by many people, unfortunately, and I wanted for both of you to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really tempting to fall into that perspective of that everything has somehow changed. And it has, but we are still the same country and the same people. And the structures around us are shifting and we're adapting to that. But I also think whenever that happens and there's this big force to push against, it also creates a lot of resistance in people. And I think it sows seeds for that kind of love to feel more urgent and potent, and for those actions of coming together to hold each other and protect each other can strengthen, I think.
Thank you, Charlotte. James?
Yeah, add to that, just anecdote about the film. We got into the Sundance Film Festival to have our world premiere, and a few weeks later the election happened, and then we got our slot, our screening date at Sundance, which is, I think, January 25th. So it was a few days
yeah,
after.
That was wild.
Yeah. And I did, at that moment, in that kind of period between, say to the team, I said, we're going to Sundance. We're all so groovy. We have this totally groovy cast. Everybody's really hip. It's blah, blah, blah. And it's a comedy. So it's going to be, but I said that we're going to be day 5 of the shock of this fascism. And it might feel inappropriate to be like, Instagram, Sundance, comedy, and just be, respectful of just how traumatic this is going to be for so many folks. We got to Sundance, did the screening at the Eccles Theater, 1,400 seats, and it was a riot. It was one of the greatest screenings that I've ever had. I mean, it was just massive, kind of almost catharsis. And it was very clear that the kind of, shall we say, queer joy that's depicted in the film is exactly what people require right now. It's actually a need. That's what we're fighting for, right? So,
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. Earlier, when you introduced the film, you said that the whole project was suffused with a great love. Could you expound upon that?
That's what I'm bouncing that over to Charlotte, because you were part of that crew from day one, and I was, by the time I helped put it together and wrote it and then came back in post-production, I was zooming in and out because I had another film in Mexico I was doing, so you can talk to that.
It's true. It was a really remarkable bubble, and I think I'm a process nerd, so I believe that the product kind of, it comes through in the product, like how you make something. And the way that we made that film, I think we mentioned this before, but so many of us had come from doing driveways together. And so there was a real, like a reunion to it. There was a familial quality and a lot of trust, I think, between all of us for, and certainty around how we wanted to make the film. That, you could make a film about chosen family without being really loving to each other, but it might just not quite ring true. I'm sure it has.
It's happened before. I mean, I'm as much of a process nerd as you are, but I just have now a larger sample size of films I've worked on, and it's just
great
weird.
Wisdom.
Yeah, it's not wisdom either. It's just like, I've discovered that there is no correlation between just like the biggest assholes in the world get together and make the most transcendent piece of human art. You're like, oh my God. And the nicest people can get together and just make like the creepiest weird thing. But the nicest people in the world can, and I think Driveways really proves it. You can really bring together the nicest people, and that starts with our director And our number one on the call sheet, Bowen Yang, actually is as nice as you can imagine. Like that persona is a persona. It's not him. He's even nicer, you know. And then you get that ethos together, and it turns out like really nice people can make really great art. So it's not necessary to be a jerk.
I'm going to continue to choose to believe that the jerks make bad art because that just helps me. Whatever you say, James.
You're sadly naive. And
I'm gonna cling to my naivete as long as I possibly can.
I mean, you know.
Only nice people can make great movies. That's I'm sticking with it.
Earlier, James, you said that when the project first came up, you were initially resistant to it, maybe a little skeptical about it. What put you over the edge to finally work with Andrew on the screenwriter?
I would say that while you are correct in that account chronologically, I would say the temporality of it was more or less the equivalent to, for those of you familiar with 20th century French philosophy, Henri Bergson's durée. That is to say, like, it's less than a moment. So when the question was asked to me, and I'd just been working with Andrew, and I knew that he had such a deep connection, although I didn't know how deep, actually. It only came through the process, and a certain amount of pain that Andrew went through, especially in post, I think, on the film. How close he was to it. So my reaction was like, no way, except we know this kid, you got to meet him.
Yeah.
And let's get Andrew in. And so there was never really much of a discussion. Once Andrew responded, we were all in. And so was Ang.
So what did a 60-something screenwriter learn from working with a 30-something screenwriter and director?
You know, it's funny because it's and it's something that Ang and I have always said. Like every film is film school. We just come at it, whatever it is. It's a new genre. It's a new world. It's new characters, and so for me on this one, it was really important to try not to be like the end of Carrie with the hand comes out of the grave and like grabs Andrew and like get back. And so to be in that kind of observational space a lot. On the other hand, because of the richness, and you've experienced it now, of all of these characters. Remember, like, this is not a season of television. These are 6A characters, as they say in TV land, each with their own arc. Everybody has to, and they all interact with each other through so it's really drawing on a set of skills that. And skills that I had to learn, some of which I had to relearn on the job here. I'll call them engineering skills. So it was years of working with Andrew because he kept throwing in, and then how about if the old Wei Wei character is queer and she's had a partner and they're trying to have a baby. I was like,
yeah. I mean, it's a very loaded script in terms of the intricacy of the plot structure. Were there any subplots that you finally had to jettison because there was too much happening?
Yeah, I think that there were various iterations where Grandpa was, and in fact, so many changes. I think one thing I learned, just part of keep learning, is to what Charlotte said, is let process really become content at a certain point. So the way Andrew works, for example, when we cast Lily Gladstone, and she was like, hey, Seattle, I'm indigenous, the Duwamish people, Chief Seattle's daughter named Angela, how about, and the house, the meaning of the house of the father, I'm really holding onto this land for my people, it's really a stewardship. And that, the script moved in that direction. When we went to Yoo Jun-yoon, who had won the Oscar for Minari, I'm sure many of you saw that, and she said, I'm very flattered, but I'm maybe a little old for Mom. How about Grandma? And we're like, great, make it Grandma. And then that changed a lot of the dynamic of it too. Yeah. So it's really fascinating because name changes, generational changes in the script that I co-wrote with and wrote for Andrew. But during the past year and a half, I've also been writing, by sheer coincidence, a libretto been commissioned by the Metropolitan Opera. My friend Peter Gelb there, who was the manager, because a young composer, his favorite movie, much like Andrew Ahn's growing up, was The Wedding Banquet, and Wang Ro, an amazing composer, and I said, well, I can't write the old one. I got to write. So I've been working on that libretto, but all the names are different, and I'm totally confused. So when I went to Vancouver for the show, it was like, wait, Angela, that's Lee. No, that's May. No, that's my. It's like it's a nightmare. Yeah.
So is that project nearing completion?
It will be the Met has announced it will be the gala opening night of
Congratulations.
the 27th season. Yeah. So, thank you. I love it, and it's a completely different muscle. I mean, opera, as you know, first off, people sing, so they don't emote like this, like they go. And so you really, a lot of subtext becomes text, but it's been a great journey and a completely different, a wholly other different animal.
Let's talk money. As one of the producers of the 1993 original, you presided over a budget, if my research is correct, was about $750,000.
Correct, yeah.
Describe the experience of having a big studio budget for the 2025 version.
I don't think we could, because I don't think we did.
No.
We made it
I'm
look
flattered,
like
I'm flattered you thought we had a big budget.
I'm sorry, Charlotte. I actually pocketed $1 million of your budget. By the way, when you were talking, I was looking over at Charlotte like, she was like, what? So how it works, just so you know, I mean, first inflation, right? So that already gets us to over 3. Yeah. And then you go union, and then you go a cast that includes somebody who was just nominated for an Academy Award, somebody who's won an Academy Award, another person who's one of the biggest stars in the world, John Chen, Bowen Yang. I mean, Kelly Marie Tran is starting Star Trek. None of these people are charging us an arm and a leg, but they all tend to have to fly in, and they all tend to have just that alone, and then that setup, and then just so this shoot was a little bit longer, a few more days, 25 days. And I think Driveways was 21.
And don't ask me to remember that.
Yeah, okay.
So long ago. We definitely had less money for Driveways.
Yeah, we definitely had less money for Driveways. But it really didn't feel, at the end of the day, with the rush was the same. So,
okay. Yeah. Charlotte, if I read correctly, Vancouver was standing in for Seattle.
It was, yeah.
So talk to me about the challenges of turning Vancouver into Seattle and how you responded to transform it.
I mean, yeah, it's not so far from Seattle, so it's not like we're subbing in. I think at one point there's talk of making Vancouver, LA. That would have been trickier. I think it's, the architecture, there's similarities. We did have to search, I think, for a house that felt realistically like we could do that. And we had actually a really lovely Joe, who's James' producing partner, and Andrew and Keejan and I had a really lovely little jaunt down to Seattle where we met with Lily, and she actually was incredibly generous. We thought we were maybe going to meet her for lunch. In Seattle. Yeah. She lives there. She grew up there, and she was like, well, let me show you guys the neighborhood we would live in, and let me just show you around. And we had this incredible day where we got this just amazing download of somebody who grew up there. And for me, I was just like absorbing it all. And that was so helpful, because you can spend hours and hours on the internet and not get that kind of sense of a place. And
you still wouldn't know about the bag of dicks.
No, that was in fact one of our drunken. Not drunk. We were having a good time, and we went to Dick's in the night. There are blurry photos to prove it, and we wrote it into the movie, or Andrew did. So I think that there's that download, and again that comes from a process of generosity where Andrew really starts, like, he's listening, he's taking it in, we're all kind of willing to say, all right, well, what are you bringing to this table? And for Lily, she was really bringing that, coming from Seattle, coming from such a specific perspective, and being so generous with us to give us this resource. And then it was just a matter of having onboarded that, having listened myself, because I'm on board with that way of filmmaking. Then going to Vancouver and saying, like, okay, well, I know what we're looking for. I know the energy that we need this house to have. I know the depth of character in the past, and then like what the bones need to look like, and what the garden needs to give us. I mean, it needs to meet us partway in these ways. You know,
There's such an array of small, intimate details. Is that your signature touch?
It is. I can vouch. Yeah. I mean, the house, as you saw, is a character in the film. It's really a major character, I think, and the garden too. And that garden, it's easy to overlook. Especially, I mean, gardens in movies are really not the easiest, especially on a budget. But that's not a kind of typical raised bed, put some tomatoes and some basil garden. That's a yew and lily garden, I think.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I was also a community farmer for like a decade in Bed-Stuy, so that garden was actually based on a type of garden bed that I've replicated at my house. So I also am a little bit of a plant nerd, and that intersecting, I think, with Lily's passion for kind of representing Indigenous stories on screen in a way that's respectful, and that kind of research I could do for eons. So that was such a delight.
Definitely. Could we open this up to questions from the audience? Anybody would like to hazard a question?
Thank you. Excellent. Enjoyed it. The fiber art that Min was working on, was that something you guys did yourself? Did you source an artist locally, or what was that process?
I love that question. When Andrew called me to do this film, that was honestly one of the first things. We got partway through the conversation, was like, yeah, okay, we got to get you on a plane, XYZ. And then immediately he was like, so this art, Min's art. And that was one of the first conversations. We didn't even, I don't think, fully work out all the details. We went straight into that. And we both felt really strongly. He had this really strong notion of wanting to do the Pojagi artwork, but we didn't know. He had kind of reached out to his network, and luckily his partner is kind of in the art world a little bit as well. And so there was kind of this network that was looking, and I forget who. I think a friend of his maybe brought us Julia, that connection. Yeah, Julia Kwan.
I've done a little bit of that. I've been bombarding with some email.
Yeah,
links,
you were part of that.
Julia Kwan is an amazing artist, and it's a real tradition. And this is usually women in Korea who are transforming these traditions and practices into, I think, some of the most stunning, we call it high art or gallery art out there right now. But Julia Kwan is just like off the charts. But then you also had to create all this other. You can't just take Julia Kwan and rip it apart and then put it back together again.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, her work though, as Min's art was so central, and we had a whole thing of Andrew and I going and being like, please bring your art into the movie. And then I think it was a matter of the group show too, and all the kind of work around it those were all Vancouver artists, and that was also me. And in the house, that was me being a little insane, and my poor team. Actually, they were amazing. They were so on board. But I was like, we need to find local, queer artists, and we need to put them everywhere in the movie. And so it was a ton of work for them and me, just producing that, contacting them all, getting the releases, getting the artwork. I mean, I was driving around on the weekend, picking up and returning artwork so that it could be in the house and be in the gallery space. But I think it was entirely worth it.
How many weeks or months was the complete shoot?
The whole shoot?
Yeah.
It was 5 weeks.
Thank you.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
time blind. Yeah, that sounds right.
and prep was only, full prep was only 5 weeks. We had a very short prep time because we had been chasing, Bowen had always been attached, and Lily came on board, but their schedules, because of Saturday Night Live in particular, and then there was this little movie called Wicked, and then there was then the Academy stuff, and it was just crazy. So they really only had a few weeks overlap. And so everything had to come together. It was years of trying to get the film made, and suddenly we had to make it in a month and a half, and that was wow. That was very hard.
Next question from the audience.
I enjoyed the film very much, and I was really I was impressed with the intimacy that the actors had and the chemistry between them. Was there much in the way of of casting, or did you pretty much know who you wanted? How did your casting process go? And just the chemistry of the actors was just phenomenal in terms of intimacy with each other and level of comfort.
Yeah, I'm glad you caught that because it's so crucial. We have amazing casting director Jenny Ju, but it took us so long to put it together that some of the people that we had cast when we said we're going now, and then they're like, no, maybe not. And it's always that way. Like you get your second choice or somebody you hadn't thought of in a rush, and then you get on set and you're like, how could we have ever done this without this person? Right? And they didn't have a lot of time to rehearse because people were coming in from all over at the last minute. But Andrew is really lovely in the way he gets his actors to not just rehearse their parts, but connect to make relationships with each other. So he had the actors really go out and do things with each other. And then if you have Bowen Yang and Lily and Colleen Marie and Hanji Chan, I mean, trust me, it's going to be a fun set, like, unless there's some jerk that you throw in the mix, but we didn't have that. And they really went, I mean, it was just off the charts. I've never seen anything like it, but they all went to the Korean Mamma Mia thing, and then
That was amazing.
they would go watch couples therapy, like they've just been watch couples therapy and dissect it. And I mean, there was just so many things. A movie that actually Charlotte designed went on release while we were shooting in Vancouver. A beautiful film that Lily Gladstone stars in called Fancy Dance. It's a gorgeous movie. Everybody goes the Fancy Dance. It was just one of those. They were inseparable the whole time. Yeah.
Great. Next question, please.
So I was doing a little research today to see if there had ever been in the history of cinema where a screenwriter on the original film remakes it. There's been times, of course, where directors remake their films, but do you know of this being? I couldn't find anything, but I didn't know if you.
Now I've really got to go look that up. Yeah, it's got to happen. I mean, we all re-launder our own crap all the time, anyhow. I mean, it's like
Right.
just call it something different. But yeah, that's a really interesting question.
Yeah,
Because
I couldn't find anything. I mean, Alfred Hitchcock,
Yeah, it's just-
Cronenberg, Michael Mann,
Lubitsch,
Lubitsch, Hawks. Howard Hawks did Ball of Fire, and then remade it to.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find anything like you, James.
Well, there you
where
go.
Okay. I didn't
But it
know.
really is. Like I said, what was great about it, back to the learning question, is, of course, the really insisting this is not a remake. Like, whatever we do. And so what was interesting was that Andrew rewatched I don't call it the original, by the way. I call it the old movie. He rewatched it religiously. I mean, he was constantly. I have the weird thing, which is I will watch a movie I've worked on at the world premiere. So I saw the old Wedding Banquet in Berlin at the Zoopalast when we were there for the film festival, which it eventually won the Golden Bear. And I hadn't seen it since. The only time I ever rewatch a movie that I've worked on, honestly, is when I'm on a plane and somebody sitting next to me happens to put on like Crouching Tiger, and then I'm trying to work, and I'm like.
Wait, so in this whole process, you never once rewatched
No.
the film?
No, and I
This is news to me.
only rewatched it about a month ago when I helped put on a retrospective of Ang's films at the Asia Society in New York City, and they wanted me to do a Q&A after the Wedding Banquet. I thought I'd better watch it because I kind of I don't know what's like. I have no idea like who's who and what's going on. So
Does it hold up?
What's that?
Does it hold up?
I thought it was pretty good. But I'm so in this
It's
one.
a beautiful film.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Yes.
Hi, thank you. Han Ji-chan. So, was he cast and then it all became Korean? Or was that character Korean and you cast Him.
So Andrew On is Korean American, and his first he made a first film, a very micro budget film, tiny crew, called Spa Night, which I really recommend, about growing up in Koreatown in Los Angeles. It's a stunning work. So part of the whole thing was to really to transform the old Wedding Banquet now with Korean, and originally there was Taiwanese, whichever, well, I don't know what we're calling her anymore, Lee, Angela, whatever, May, so that we had all this, and it kept changing with the different cast, and at one point there was somebody who was adopted, but then there was the thing, so the mom, and that's, by the way, for the opera, the composer Wang Ro really wants the mom, who's played by Joan Chen here, to be white, and make the kid adopted, because he's really into that story. But Andrew didn't want any of that, and was not into the white boyfriend for the Asian guy thing. So everything kept changing, around. So the interesting thing for casting that role, of course, is that Korea is just really starting in significant ways to have a truly out queer culture. So it's very, very, it's like what we went through with Taiwan almost 30 years ago. People are really going through right now. A lot of people are going through that in Korea. So there's a whole new generation that's just starting to come out. And really, I mean, almost every week, somebody's like some pop star in Korea is coming out. So it's great, but it's like, whew, that took a while. It's really, and there's, for some folks here might be Korean or Korean American would know, since the days of the Moonies, remember the unification?
Mm-hmm.
There's still, and there's just an intense, with the American occupation and the war, there's an intense evangelical, really very firm grip culture there too, that has a big sway over this. So finding an actor who will play an out gay part, this specific was a challenge, and Han Ji-chan actually, although in his own account, not one of the tribe, but still he actually had starred in a very, very popular and really lovely TV series that is part of this new culture. Is kind of they call them boy love series. It's kind of like teen heartbreak. Kind of longing, kind of. If you've seen Heartstoppers, if anybody watched Heartstoppers,
Yeah.
which is like my wife's favorite TV show, it's that kind of, like that. So and so he raised a hand and said, "Hell yeah, hell's yeah," and he's just phenomenal. He's beloved. A lot of those boy love shows are followed mainly by girls and women. Often that's the way the culture works. And then there's a whole other people watching, but they're not posting about it. And so this has been a great thing. This is his first time ever in the States or outside of Korea, first ever English language role.
So will the film be seen in South Korea?
This is really a great question and great news. We made the film, again, not studio. We had to sell it. We bifurcated the rights, a very independent company called Bleecker Street here in the States, and a Universal Acquisitions Group picked it up. So you think, Universal Studio. No, that's where where you deliver the film and then they show you the thumbnail that will go up on like Amazon and Germany. Like that's kind of, it's a kind of a straight to, what we used to call straight to video. But they have, as I used to run a Focus Features, which is part of Universal, I know that business really well. It used to actually report into me. And they're great. They really find ways to plug in new, interesting stuff. So it was a great conversation after Sundance when they realized that even though they got the movie for very little money, it was actually worth the risk of spending marketing on theatrical releases. It will be going out theatrically in the UK, Ireland in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then we were very happy. It took a long time, but it will actually be going out with a theatrical release in Korea in September.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
and it will be, by the way, the other thing it doesn't register here, but Yoon Yoo-jung, who plays the grandmother, is like the Meryl Streep and Tom Cruise, whatever, of Korea. Like she's like royalty.
She's a really big deal.
She's a big deal. And after Minari, I mean, and she, by the way, she's really one of the funniest people and most ornery.
Also, like extremely cool.
Like
she's very
honestly,
cool.
like everybody wants to be her. Like on the crew, like it was just like that's it. And she cannot not be honest, right? So like after Minari, and she wins an Academy Award, she's like, I will not do, American independent. She was hated every second of the whole thing. Like,
I mean, to be fair, I worked with a lot of those crew because they were in Oklahoma, which is where we shot Fancy Dance, and it did sound actually pretty bad.
yeah, it was a rough shoot.
I want to validate her a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm validating her completely. She got the
crazy
script
hot.
and she was like, I'm not reading this. I'm never doing this again.
Yeah.
It was a terrible experience. And then her son said, please read it. And her son had just come out as gay.
Wow.
And she read it and she said, for you, I'm going to do it. And her press on this movie has had such an impact in Korea. It's incredible. Like just it's like literally having the queen go, yay, queer,
I mean, and to be like, my son is gay and like married his partner. I mean, to have her come out and own and really like own that. Talking to her son who like kind of helps manage her, like that's such an immense step for her and for their family. And so for this film to be part of that, for this film to be part of Kelly's coming out story, there's...
Yeah, we didn't even talk about it. You should tell
I
that.
know. Well, yeah, I mean, Kelly also, signed on to do this film and was like, hey, this is something I've discovered about myself kind of just now. And I'm in this really long-term relationship, with another woman, and it's been really life-changing. And so I think that's, again, the way the process invites people in and allows there to be room for that and allows even these intergenerational pains to soften. It goes beyond the film, and that's been incredibly moving.
Yeah, no, I mean, Kelly and Marie Tran we were on set. We had a set visit from Vanity Fair. I think it was Vanity Fair, Michael Schulman, and who was interviewing, really doing a thing on Bowen. And Kelly was talking to him and said, I was a queer person. And he's like, huh? And she goes, oh, did I just literally, the star of that last Star Wars movie, did I just literally just come out? And then she was like, hell's yeah.
We have time for one more question.
Hi there. Very wonderful movie. Very moving. There was a strong focus on matriarchs in the film, both like very generationally, but also the women trying to become matriarchs themselves. And you mentioned that there was an aspect that you were considering the grandfather, and then that was cut, if I recognized that correctly. I'm curious as to the importance of that in the film, and if that was very purposeful, because it came across that way.
Yeah, it was, and part of it came from discussions that Andrew and I had at the very beginning, when I said, one of the things I'm very proud of from the old movie was that it's a movie about patriarchy. It really is. I mean, it's about the father, and the whole plot twist is the father. Everything. It's really, and his emotions and what he's does, and it's that gift. But also at the end, if people remember the old movie, it's a weird genesis. And I'll just give a 1-minute version of this. But Ang had won a screenwriting competition in Taiwan from Central Motion Picture, and with the #1 script, he ranked #1, and he won second place. #1 was a script called Pushing Hands, and when he made that film, it was his first film, Tuishu. And the film did extremely well in Taiwan. Didn't really get a huge global audience, but it was a very respectable film. And at that point, Central Motion Picture said, "Oh, you won second place, and our fiscal year ends in 2 months. So we'll give you, and because we just made all this money on your first one, we'll give you twice the money because we got $350,000 for that one.
Wow.
And so we'll give you $700,000 if you can do this script called The Wedding Banquet." Well, that script was rough. It was co-written. It was interesting. It was a pure melodrama about a closeted gay guy, New York, fake wedding. Parents come over. They discover that he's gay. It blows the whole thing up. Everybody screams and yells and cries, and then the parents go home. It's a tragedy. So I was like, I don't know, And at that point, I was executive producing Todd Haynes' first feature, Tom Kalin, Swoon, and doing a lot of like new queer cinema, even though I'm like whatever. And so I was like, But I'd just been rereading a great book by Stanley Cavell, the Harvard philosopher and movie buff. And he wrote a book about Hollywood screwball comedies, and what he called comedies of remarriage. And he understood that it turns out all the great romantic comedies are not like meet cute, but I don't like you because you're weird, and oh, you're weird, and then oh, we love each other. They're always about falling back in love after you've already broken up. And it's about the maturity of that moment, right? It's really interesting. So I said, oh, you know what? The structure of the wedding banquet is this, with Simon, the husband, the boyfriend. There was no gay marriage back then, by the way. And I said, how about, I've got like 3 weeks, can I just rewrite this as a screwball comedy? And to Yang, to his credit, was like, shit, yeah. So I was just pounding it out, like literally, it was surreal. So that's the background, but the center of it is the patriarch. And I noticed that the revolutionary piece of that at that time, and certainly Eat, Drink, Man, Woman continued that, is the acknowledging the patriarch's desires, his regrets, that he is a desiring subject. He is not in charge of anything. He's just like everybody else. He's just like, like that. And so we really leaned in on that. What's interesting now is the last few years, especially in kind of pop Asian culture, you've noticed the guys have kind of gone a little to the side. And I'm not sure it's politically the best or the worst or whatever. I don't have an analysis, but Crazy Rich Asians, if you notice, dads are always off screen because they're working and having affairs and whatever they're doing. So the patriarchy is both absent, but it's a structuring absence. It's a very strange, still very powerful, but these guys are just not even around, right? It's very odd. So we've reproduced that in a way. I think it's a little different from Crazy Rich Asians in some ways, but it really was to serve a different version of the relationship of these young people to what their inheritance was. So I don't know. I mean, that's a long-winded way of not answering your question, but maybe answering some of it, right? But that's at least the context for it. So it was very mindful that we did that. And I just went through that process on the libretto, by the way, too, where there was a very strong suggestion from the dramaturg at the Met and from my composer, oh, please, let's have the grandpa. I was like, and I wrote a whole scene with that, and I was like, shred.
I just always assumed it was because Andrew's such a mama,
Oh, there you go. Exactly.
Please join me in thanking Charlotte Royer and James Schamus. And thank you, everybody in the audience, for coming here tonight. Please tell your friends about the wedding banquet.
And thank you, Jay, for moderating.
Certainly.